Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. So tonight we're here for the second reading of the Sexual Offender and Predator Residential Restriction Ordinance. Madam Clerk, can you read that into the record?
Yes, it's an ordinance of the City of Crestview, Florida, establishing Chapter 55, Sexual Offenders and Sexual Predators, providing for authority, providing for severability, providing for Scrivener's errors, providing for liberal interpretation, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
So this has come before you during the city manager's presentation the first time, and then it's come before you for the first reading. So really the only thing that's left is to answer any questions that you all have.
Do you have any comments or questions from the council?
I'd like to
Go ahead,
comment.
Councilman Cap.
I just want to comment. You know, I've shared some stuff as well, having worked on this with the chief for the better part of a year now, with you guys, the Bureau of Justice Statistics and Florida Department of Corrections statistics there about recidivism rates. You know, 29% of these folks will be arrested again within 12 months and 67% within 9 years. That's 2/3. So I did want to thank Chief McCosker and his team for working on this with me, and Mr. Boldock as well, and Mr. Holloway put in a bit of work on it as well. So I'd just like to see us, you know, get this ordinance passed and, you know, protect our children. So,
Any other comments or questions from council? Seeing none, this is a public meeting, and I have one card. Mr. Michael Finley, you want to address the council? You have 3 minutes. Please make sure your remarks are addressed to the whole council.
I appreciate
Thank you.
that. Thank you. My name is Michael Finley. I'm a registered citizen for an offense that occurred back in the early 90s, and I am truly sorry for my past. I own my own home, and I've lived in it for a period of 23 years with my wife and my son, and my wife is here with me tonight. I am her caregiver. She had a hip replacement, and she's now in a wheelchair due to an infection that would cause the metal hip, or caused an infection in the metal hip, and she can no longer walk. Recently, she has been diagnosed with stage 5 kidney failure and has been on dialysis for the past 4 years. It's my understanding that my wife and I would be exempt from this ordinance. However, my concern would be what would happen if we had a house fire or flooding or tornado or getting hit by hurricane damage, which is everything that happens within this area. There would be no place for us to move or even having a temporary residence within Crestview, which is where we live and where my wife's doctors are. All research that shows that people released from prison who commit a sex offense have a lower recidivism rate than for any other type of crime except for murder. Solid factual evidence shows that 90% or more of people arrested for a sex crime are not even on the sex offender registry. At least 93% of minors know the person who sexually assaults them. However, these future perpetrators of sex offenses are not lurking in the bushes at bus stops. They're in our schools. They're in our churches. They're in our family gatherings and so on. They're everywhere. And your ordinance will not do anything to stop them from committing another sex crime in the future. And why? It's because they're not on law enforcement's radar. The 88 are, you know where we're all at, but the people that are in there that have never committed a crime before aren't. So your law enforcement is not going to know where they are. I'm sorry, I got a little bit mixed up here. Lastly, I want to say that in Gainesville, they tried having one of these laws, and they found that it's easier to defend the state's 1,000-foot registry rather than having another registry that would, or another ordinance that would bump it up to about 1,500. Volusia County proposed 1,500 residency restriction for its unincorporated areas, and they just decided that they weren't going to do that. They were going to stick with the 1,000-foot law. Crestview could actually be opening itself up for a costly lawsuit, all for an ordinance that is not, or all for an ordinance that research does not support. We that are here, the 88, you know where we're at. And if you know where we're at and you need some questions answered, come knocking on our doors. You don't have to make an ordinance like this throwing us out. The renters are the ones that I'm talking about. It's not something that's going to happen like immediately. I'm sure they're going to be stalking somebody if they're going to do that, but they're not doing that. Nobody else, and I saw the other video last time that you guys met, nobody said that there was a whole bunch of sex crimes lurking or going on in this area. I don't understand why you're trying to put forth a new ordinance, unless it's
Mr.
just
Finley,
out of prejudice.
Would you wrap it up, please?
Mr. Mayor,
I'm done.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would request that we allow additional time for the speaker to continue.
You are basically done, weren't you?
Basically, yes.
Yes.
Palm Beach came to the same conclusion, that they can't support a 1,500-foot ordinance to keep residents, or keep sex offender residents away from the city. It's so much more important that you know where we're at. I support law enforcement knowing where a sex offender is at. I don't support the public doing it, because that creates a huge, huge problem. But I don't think it's such a bad idea that we have a registry that is for law enforcement only. Now, there's some people that I have been part of, groups that I've been part of, they want it all abolished. That's fine, they can have that. I have my own opinions. I think my way is safer. And it's been done that way until they started bringing out the laws and letting the public know where we all are at. And to be quite honest, that's not a real good thing. I've got some things that have happened to our home. One of the things, somebody came pounding on my wife's window. She's in a hospital bed, sleeps by a window, or right by the window. This person, whoever it was, scared the stuffings out of her. I ran outside, but nobody was there. So I have no idea where they were or who they were, but the fact of the matter is that it happened. We found a dead cat on our doorstep. I had to have Crestview PD come out, and the only reason why I had them come out was just to take a report and let them know this stuff happens. I'm not bothering anybody. None of us in my family would bother anybody. But they took the registry information that I was there and decided that they were going to come and do something to our house. We don't need this hassle. Most of the other sex offenders that are here, all we want to do is live in our homes and die. I've planned on probably burying her before me, and then my son is going to have to take care of me when I get older. But once that happens, you guys are not going to have to worry about us anymore. There's nothing I can
Mr.
give you.
Finley, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I bring it, anybody else in the public like to speak to the council? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for action, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I move that we pass ordinance at 1950 as written.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to pass ordinance 1950 on second reading. Do we have any discussion on that?
One question.
Go ahead.
I just want to get reiteration from our legal on what exactly are we opening up ourselves, or what was the assessment that was made on it?
Yeah, so we're pretty comfortable with the way this ordinance is written versus some of the other cities that decided to back off from that. There's about 60 other counties and cities in the state that have more restrictive, or at least this restrictive. So we're pretty comfortable with the ordinance as written.
Any other comments or questions?
I would like to ask a
Councilman
question.
Bowler, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question of legal as well, and probably the city manager. He made a valid point when he asked where would he move after a storm if there were a fire, natural disaster, and he had to move to, say, a neighbor's house. It sounds like this would be restrictive, and I also had a second question as well, which is in our ordinance we're mentioning bus stops. However, those can move on a daily or minute basis. How are we going to address those two questions?
Well, I think only one of those is really to me, and that's if there is an issue with the residents. As you write an ordinance, you can't make it so that every exception would be captured. It applies to a new residence. And so if he no longer is lawfully allowed to live in a different place, then this is what that ordinance prohibits. There is not a written exemption for that in this ordinance, and I think it would be challenging to create that sort of path for a one-off occasion that we don't know will happen in the future.
What about the movement of bus stops? I mean, so one day somebody could be in the zone and then 5 minutes later they're not, then they are, then they're not.
So before they would be able to rent the property or buy or move into the property, then it would be based on the bus stops at the time that they did that. So if the bus stop moved the next day or the day after that, again, they are then in the location, it would be an existing non-conforming. So that means that you wouldn't go back to tell them to move again because they had legally moved into that residence.
What happens then when their lease is up for a renewal and then the bus stop is moved?
So we are not impairing contract rights, which is what the Constitution requires of us. If it is not an existing contract right, then it would be prohibited.
Is there a way for us to go back to the drawing board to write some sort of exceptions for like natural disasters, fires, and then remove the bus stop clause from the ordinance?
Well, we'll take a stab at whatever the council as a group wants us to. I do think, that consistent with what I said earlier, it would be challenging to write an exemption for something we don't know what the circumstances might be 20 years from now.
Okay. I do support this ordinance, but without knowing about moving because of a storm or fire, which, we're talking about disabled people, and then we're further, regardless of past crimes and reoffenses, like, if their only option is to stay with a neighbor for a few days, and then, we're criminalizing that when they're moving next door, and then the bus stop moving, and I couldn't support it with those two things in there, but the rest of the ordinance as it's written, I do support it.
Do we have any other comments or questions? There would be no changes unless if the motion fails, then there might be an attempt at changing. But if the motion passes, the ordinance will stay as it is now, just so you understand that. So the motion on the floor in the second right now is to pass the ordinance as written. So could I have a call from all those in favor of the motion as written right now?
Aye.
Could and all those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so what I have here is, with one absence, we have 4 people. We have 3 ayes and only 1 dissension, Councilman Bullitt, so the ordinance passes as written.